It begins with a quiet ache, the kind that hides behind closed doors and polite smiles. You reach for something, a dream, a person, a future, and it slips just beyond your grasp. You try again, harder this time, but the universe stays silent. We've all known that sting, the job that didn't come through, the love that wasn't returned, the door that closed too early. In those moments, it feels as if life itself has turned its back on us. We whisper to ourselves, "Why not me? Why now?" And the silence that follows feels cruel, deliberate, as if the world is teaching us a lesson we never asked to learn. But what if that silence is not punishment, but protection? What if every unanswered prayer, every failure, every detour is quietly leading you toward something gentler, wiser, truer? Because maybe, just maybe, not getting what you want is the first step to finding what you need. And in that small shift between desire and surrender, a door you never saw begins to open. Have you ever looked back on a disappointment and realized it was actually a gift in disguise? We live in an age that worships control. From morning routines to 5-year plans, we are taught that life is a ladder and that every rung must lead us somewhere higher, faster, better. We chase progress like oxygen, terrified that slowing down means falling behind. Our calendars overflow, our minds spin with goals, and our hearts, quietly, grow weary. Everywhere we look, someone else seems to be getting there sooner. The promotion, the love story, the perfect body, the peace of mind. And so we tighten our grip. We plan harder. We strive more. But in doing so, we forget the most fragile truth of all. Control is an illusion. We build lives that look complete, yet feel strangely hollow. Our dreams become checklists. Our joy becomes performance. We forget that growth often hides inside uncertainty, and that silence, though uncomfortable, is not our enemy. We pray for things to go our way, not realizing that our way might be too small for what life intends. It's strange, isn't it? The more we chase what we think we want, the more we distance ourselves from what we truly need. We want clarity, but we drown in choices. We want connection, but we curate personas. We want happiness, but we demand it to arrive on our schedule. And when life refuses to obey, we call it unfair. We forget that perhaps the universe is not withholding anything from us. It's simply waiting for us to stop running long enough to see the other path. There's a quiet paradox in all this. The moments we label as failure often carry the seeds of transformation. The relationships that end teach us what love is not. The dreams that collapse make space for ones that actually belong to us. The silence we resent becomes the soil in which wisdom grows. But because we fear emptiness, we fill every pause with noise, a scroll, a purchase, a plan, a distraction. We treat uncertainty like an error, not an invitation. And yet, if you listen closely, beneath the frustration and the loss, there's a whisper that says, "This was meant to happen. You are being redirected." Maybe the things that slip away aren't mistakes. Maybe they're gentle hands, turning us toward what we've been too afraid to see. How many times in your life did something go wrong, only for you to later realize it was guiding you towards something far better? There's a quiet wisdom hidden within every disappointment. a wisdom so subtle that most of us miss it. It speaks in the language of pauses, redirections, and endings. It doesn't shout, it waits. The ancient Stoics knew this well. They called it amor fati, the love of fate. Not mere acceptance, but love. The radical act of embracing everything that happens, not as random, but as essential. Because to resist what is to suffer twice. Once from the event itself, and again from our refusal to let it transform us. We are taught to believe that life unfolds in a straight line. Desire, effort, reward. But in truth, it's more like the tide, moving forward and back, carrying what's needed, washing away what isn't. To stand still and demand that the sea only flow toward us is madness. And yet, that's how most of us live. When things don't go our way, we fight. We bargain with destiny. We try to rewrite the story in real time. But the universe has a rhythm older than our ambitions. It doesn't operate on the timeline of our impatience. It unfolds on the timeline of our becoming. What we call loss may actually be the removal of what no longer aligns with who we are becoming. What we call failure may be the universe's way of saying, you were aiming too low. And what we call waiting may be the sacred pause before the next door opens. It's not easy to trust this. Our minds want clarity. Our hearts crave control. We want to believe we are the architects of everything, that if we plan hard enough, we can outsmart fate. But there are moments when the universe whispers, not this path, not yet. Imagine for a moment that life is a grand weaving. You see only the threads in front of you, the knots, the tangles, the colors that make no sense. But from above, the pattern is breathtaking. Every heartbreak, every delay, every failure becomes a necessary thread in the design. The darker strands make the gold ones shine. When you lose something you wanted, you are not being punished. You are being positioned. Sometimes the only way to reach the right destination is through the detour you didn't choose. The great mystic Rumi once said, "Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in another form." He wasn't speaking of comfort. He was pointing to transformation. The form may change, but the essence returns. Love, meaning, peace, they are never truly gone. They simply shift, waiting to meet you again in another moment, another person, another part of your journey. The pain you feel in the moment of loss is not a verdict. It's an initiation. It's life, stretching you beyond what you thought you could bear, preparing you for something you couldn't yet imagine. Like a seed breaking open underground, it must shatter before it can bloom. There is a strange grace in disappointment when we stop fighting it, when we stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin to ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" That single shift changes everything. It turns pain into insight, endings into beginnings, chaos into clarity. Think of the times you didn't get what you wanted, and something quieter, truer appeared instead. Maybe the rejection that crushed you led you toward your calling. Maybe the relationship that ended freed you to love more honestly. Maybe the plan that collapsed forced you to finally live, not just exist. It's not that we should never desire or never strive. It's that we must learn to hold our desires with open hands, allowing them to change, allowing ourselves to be surprised. The tighter we grip, the more life slips through our fingers. But when we let go, when we trust that what is meant for us will find us, the world softens. This doesn't mean we stop trying. It means we learn to try without clinging, to move with purpose but not with desperation. To believe that the path unfolding, even when uncertain, carries its own wisdom. You see, surrender isn't the opposite of strength. It's the highest form of it. To surrender is not to give up. It's to give in to the flow of what already is. It's standing in the storm and whispering, "I trust." Because life is not a machine to be controlled. It's a mystery to be lived. And the moments we label as wrong turns are often the bridges that lead us home. The truth, then, is simple but uncomfortable. The universe doesn't always give us what we want. It gives us what we need. And often, those two are not the same. But if you stay long enough with your disappointment, if you let silence speak instead of rushing to fill it, you may begin to sense a quiet pulse beneath it all. The heartbeat of something larger, wiser, infinitely patient. That heartbeat has always been guiding you. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It simply whispers, "Trust me. There's more." And one day, perhaps years later, you'll look back on what you once called loss and smile, because you'll realize it wasn't the end of your story. It was the chapter that taught you how to read it. What if the moments you resist most are the exact moments that are reshaping you into who you were always meant to be? There was once a man named Elias, a craftsman known for his precision. He built furniture for the small town he lived in, tables, chairs, and chests that lasted generations. His hands were steady, his tools were exact, and his life followed the same rhythm every day. Measured, deliberate, controlled. For years he had one dream: to craft the perfect cabinet. He spent months sketching designs, selecting wood, and testing hinges until everything aligned. When it was finally complete, it stood taller than him, gleaming with a quiet pride. He believed it would be his masterpiece, the work that would define his life. But the night before the cabinet was to be displayed, a storm swept through the valley. Lightning struck the workshop. By dawn, all that remained was ash, a few charred beams, and the scent of smoke drifting over wet earth. Elias fell to his knees in disbelief. Everything, his tools, his sketches, his life's work, was gone. He stopped building. For months, he wandered the hills in silence, a man hollowed out by loss. Then, one morning, he found himself by the river's edge. The water shimmered with the first light of dawn, carrying small fragments of wood downstream, remnants of his past drifting freely. He picked one up. It was smooth, shaped by the current. The edges softened into something unexpectedly beautiful. Something inside him stirred. He began collecting the pieces, broken scraps, burnt remnants, discarded planks from old ruins. Slowly, over months, he began to build again. But this time, he didn't measure. He didn't plan. He simply followed the shapes the wood offered him. Each imperfection guided his hands differently. Curves became doors. Cracks became patterns. Uneven grains became texture. When he was done, he didn't recognize what he had made. It wasn't a cabinet. It was something far more alive. A mosaic of fragments, each piece whispering a story of survival. It looked imperfect, but it breathed. Travelers began to visit from distant villages to see this strange creation. They said it felt human. They would touch the rough edges and say it reminded them of their own scars. And slowly, Elias began to understand. His masterpiece was not the flawless cabinet he had lost. It was the rebirth that came from the ashes. Years later, when asked how he managed to build again after such loss, he smiled and said softly, "Because the fire didn't destroy my work. It revealed what I was truly meant to create." In time, that imperfect sculpture came to symbolize something much larger than one man's pain. It became a place where people came to grieve, to remember, to begin again. It became proof that beauty is not the absence of destruction. It's the transformation of it. And every spring, when the river flooded, Elias would watch pieces of driftwood float downstream, just as his did years before. He would whisper to the current, "Take them where they need to go." Because he finally understood. Sometimes life burns away what no longer serves us, not to punish us, but to make space for something more honest to emerge. We spend our lives trying to preserve what was, instead of trusting what might be forming beneath the loss. In the end, Elias didn't rebuild his workshop. He built a small open pavilion by the river, where light and water met, a place without walls. Visitors left flowers, poems, and sometimes small fragments of wood they found along their journey. He called it the place of becoming. And in that space, open to the wind, the light, and the sound of flowing water, people found something they didn't know they were missing. Peace with what was lost. What if the very fire that destroys your plans is the same fire that forges your true purpose? There comes a moment in every life when the illusion of control finally breaks. Sometimes it shatters in a single blow, a loss, a betrayal, a diagnosis, a dream undone. Other times it dissolves quietly, like a candle burning out after years of pretending to be a star. When that moment comes, the noise stops. The plans stop. All that's left is the question, what now? That question used to terrify you. Now it feels strangely pure. Because for the first time, it's not about fixing, winning, or proving. It's about listening. And beneath the rubble of everything you thought you wanted, you start to hear something faint, the quiet hum of being alive. You begin to realize that every wrong turn carried you here. Every heartbreak cracked you open just enough for light to enter. Every silence that once felt cruel now sounds like grace. Because in losing what you wanted, you found something softer, yourself. It's an almost unbearable truth that the universe sometimes gives us pain not as punishment, but as invitation. It strips away our armor, our plans, our definitions, until only the essence remains, the part of you that cannot be destroyed. That part was never dependent on achievement or approval. It was simply waiting to be remembered. And when you finally stop fighting what is, when you look back at the ashes and see not disaster, but design, something miraculous happens. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start whispering, "Thank you." Because now you see that every disappointment was a conversation between your small self and your larger destiny. Every no was the universe saying, "Not here, not yet. Trust me." And every loss was secretly clearing a path to a life that feels real. Not perfect, not planned, but real. You begin to understand why Elias smiled by the river. Why the storm was never the enemy. Because sometimes, the only way to find peace is to let life unmake you, so it can remake you truer. In that realization, something inside softens. You no longer need to rush to the next goal or force meaning out of every turn. You start to see the beauty of the in-between, the pauses, the waiting, the uncertainty. You breathe easier, even when you don't know what's next. And maybe that's the quiet miracle of it all, that the moment we stop demanding answers is the moment life begins to speak. Not in thunder or lightning, but in the gentle rhythm of your own heartbeat, reminding you that even in loss, you are exactly where you need to be. Can you allow yourself to trust that the story of your life, even the broken chapters, has always been leading you home? There is a quiet peace that comes when we stop chasing what was never meant to stay. It's not resignation, it's release. The kind that doesn't shout, doesn't demand, doesn't explain. It simply lets go. You begin to see that every closed door, every unanswered prayer, every pause was a kind of mercy. Not the cruel withholding of a universe that didn't care, but the gentle hand of one that knew you weren't ready yet. And maybe that's the hidden grace of not getting what you want. It gives you the chance to meet who you truly are without it. Because in the end, peace isn't found in having everything go right. It's found in trusting that even what goes wrong can still lead somewhere beautiful. When you stop fighting life, you begin to dance with it. When you stop demanding control, you start to see the poetry in chaos. So tonight, perhaps, pause. Think of one moment in your life that didn't go as planned, and instead of asking why, whisper, "Thank you." Because that moment, though painful, may have been the beginning of something far greater than you ever imagined. And as you breathe, remember this. Every disappointment you've carried was never meant to define you. It was meant to refine you. Sometimes, not getting what you want is the universe's way of giving you back your soul.